if you're offering content creation and that sort of thing, you want to be able to create good graphics and make sure that your clients' brands are reflected in that. Also, with obviously the copywriting, you want to make sure that you can write good posts and that the grammar's good and that they are achieving the goals that you want to achieve, as well as that obviously you have got the more analytical side of it where you're tracking metrics, you're looking for patterns in what works. So being able to sort of look at the data and understand that as well really helps. In terms of copywriting, I literally just use like the Notes app. Magic Post is a good one for people that sort of need some help with generating drafts, and then you can sort of go in and edit it. They've also got like an inspiration feed, so you can search a keyword and see other people have been posting about it to give you inspiration. I do use Grammarly just to check over to make sure that the punctuation is good, because I feel like sometimes when you write in something and you spend so long on it, it just sort of gets to a point where you're not going to notice the mistakes yourself. Like, who am I to be sharing all this? But so many people have those same doubts, and if you think about the big creators that you're seeing, they've all started from 0 followers too. So I think the biggest thing is to just sort of move past any doubts that you might have, or sort of feelings that maybe you shouldn't be posting, or that you're not sort of at that point yet where you should have an opinion, because it can be really hard to sort of push yourself to start.
Good morning, Imogen. Thank you for agreeing to come onto the podcast. Let's get started on the early life. Please introduce yourself and a bit of a background of who you are and what you are doing now, please.
Of course. So I finished sixth form just over 4 years now. It was in May 2021. We sort of just had the pandemic, couldn't do any work experience or anything like that, because obviously you couldn't visit people's workplaces, and our exams were sort of a bit messed around. We ended up doing them a bit differently as well. So as we were sort of coming to the end of sixth form, it was really just not quite the experience that we expected, didn't get any work experience or things like that. So I basically started to freelance at that point because I wanted to build experience, and obviously because of the way that things had turned out, I'd not actually had a chance to do that while I was still at school. So that was basically what led me to just freelancing and taking on sort of lower paid projects, because I just wanted to sort of get some experience in the industry and just show what I was capable of, because at that point I didn't have any qualifications that were really related to marketing. The closest that I had was probably my business GCSE. So yeah, it all just kind of came from there. It was never really that intentional that I'd still be doing it a few years down the line, but it just started off for me as a way to build experience and make the most of the time that I had after leaving school.
Yeah. Where did you go to school, and what influences did school have on you to decide on what career you wanted?
So for sixth form, I didn't really know what I wanted to do as a career. So I basically just stayed at the school that I was at, because I already knew that it was a good school. I knew that I enjoyed it there. And I thought that A levels and that sort of approach instead of going to college was just the best fit for me. So I stayed on there and I just did subjects that I was interested in. I actually ended up studying maths, art, and RE, which aren't really that related to what I do now, but I enjoyed my A levels and it gave me some time to really figure out what I wanted to do. When it sort of got to a point of applying to uni and things like that, I didn't really know what I wanted to go into. So I didn't want to just apply to uni for the sake of it and then go off and study for years for something that perhaps I didn't actually want to go into. I feel like the main routes that was sort of spoken about were either going to uni or doing like an apprenticeship or something like that. It wasn't really spoken about sort of just freelancing and giving that a go, but I am glad that it was something that I wanted to do.
Yeah.
It did take a long while to sort of figure out what industry I wanted to go into, and at school you do get guidance with that. So they have like a careers counsellor who will do assemblies and bits like that, and then also one-to-one meetings for if perhaps you need a little bit more guidance and some help for where to look.
Influence on you within your life, and how do you carry any values they've installed into you now into your career and business?
I would say that my friends and family have always been really supportive. Like my parents never pushed me to go to uni or to go to a really fancy school. Like they were always happy for me to just do what felt right with me, and they have supported me along that. And I feel like that's really helpful just to have people that will back whatever decision you make. In terms of obviously like my friends and people that I've met in marketing as well, like I've met so many incredible people throughout my career that I've worked with or that I've seen online that I would genuinely class as friends. And it's nice to have people as well that sort of understand the industry, understand that things are going on, and it's nice to have those people you can just sort of chat with and share ideas with, especially when you're self-employed.
Now going over to school and career, what did you study in school and did you plan to end up on the route you're on now?
No, I definitely did not. So at my GCSEs, I did art, French, literally things that are like not too relevant to what I'm doing now. I did business as well, and there was a bit of marketing in that, but it wasn't huge. It was just kind of a little module in that. So I'd kind of done a little bit of in that, but I didn't know that it was something that I wanted to go down. I also studied history, and that's not really relevant to what I'm doing. So it was kind of just a case of picking subjects that I was interested in and I wanted to learn more about, because at that point I genuinely had no idea. Even at my A levels, as I said, I studied art, maths, like these things aren't really relevant. I did RE and I enjoyed that, but it wasn't necessarily something that I wanted to go down the route of a career in. I just kind of picked subjects that I liked and subjects that I could sort of learn more from, and then thought I'd sort of figure out what I want to do long term in the background. So it wasn't really intentional, and I didn't really pick subjects for what I'm doing. I would say in certain ways that they are useful. Obviously, in RE, I did a lot of essay work, a lot of work on sort of writing, and that is quite relevant to what I do now. And also art, like I've always loved creative things and know I wanted a sort of creative career, but I never picked subjects with the intention of going into marketing or anything like that.
What was your first job and what lessons did you learn from that job?
This is a really good question. I feel like quite often when you speak to someone, they'll sort of have like a really irrelevant first job or sort of a job that they look back on and are like, well, I'm glad I'm not there anymore. But for me, my first sort of, and the only job really, was obviously freelancing. And through that, I got a role at an incredible agency. That again was something that wasn't planned and it just sort of happened. And I do feel really lucky for the way that things turned out. But yeah, it wasn't really something I planned on long term. And at the time, I wasn't even sort of looking for a long term job or anything like that. I wasn't really applying to anything. So it was just nice that the opportunity came along as a result of what I was doing.
When you started your career, did you set up a plan of what you wanted to do and when?
Kind of. I feel like at the beginning, I was actually 18 years old, so I didn't really know much about anything really in terms of like having a business or working for yourself, because I'd never really experienced that before. So I'd say at the time, like I kind of had goals and I had sort of a plan, but it wasn't really too specific. Like I made a little content planner and I knew that I wanted to sort of get my name out there and be connected with people in the industry, but I wouldn't say that I had sort of a long term plan. It was more just sort of trying to get as many projects as I could and sort of get that experience. So I also did some online courses and things like that. So at the beginning, my plan was more so just to learn as much as I could and then sort of see how things go and figure out more of a long term plan down the line.
What advice would you give anyone who is looking to start their career or even change career paths?
I would say to start your personal brand, because I feel like it's one of the things that is really widely spoken about and everyone's like, you need to be doing this. But genuinely, it can make such a difference, because if you're trying to start out your career, it does set you apart from people and it gives a better first impression as well, because if someone goes on your profile, like they can get a sense of who you are, they can see your knowledge. And as well, in terms of changing career path, at the moment you might be really happy in your job and you might think that this is what you want to do long term, but later down the line you could change your mind and want to go into something else. And if you've already put that effort in and you've already made a name for yourself, you make that process so much easier. I feel like you can't really tell what's going to happen in the future. You know, maybe you'll change your mind, maybe you'll find an interest in something else. And I think just having that personal brand there just makes it so much easier, and it gives you more options. Opportunities could come along that you've not even considered or thought about. So I think it's just nice to keep yourself open to that.
Do schools do enough to promote running a business or entering the industry of social media and
I don't think that they do much in terms of that. Like, I don't think that it was really spoken to us about an option. It was more just that as to other people then online talking about it and things like that. So I wouldn't really say it was ever like encouraged at school or anything like that. And I definitely feel like it could be. Like, I didn't hear anything about personal branding or alternative ways really to sort of get into your career. I didn't really hear them speaking about that or encouraging us to do that. And I do think that if they were investing in that and they were speaking about that, that students could sort of get ahead of it. And if they are looking to then start their career, they've got a little bit of a platform already and they've got something to go off.
did you study for a marketing degree when you went entering your world of business?
I personally didn't, and I really wouldn't say that it's held me back at all. A lot of people that I sort of went to school with and did my A levels with did go to uni, and I think if that's the right choice for you, then that's the right choice for you. That's great. And a lot of them are sort of coming to the point now where they finished uni maybe last year and they're sort of looking for a job and looking for things they want to do. I don't feel like I'm any worse off for not going to uni, and I don't really feel like I'm behind because I've got 4 years of experience now, and I do feel like that's really valuable. So no, I didn't personally do it, and I think if you do want to go to uni and you want to take that route, then that's great because you've just got to do what's right for you at the end of the day. But I don't think you have to, and I wouldn't say that I'm any worse off for not.
If you could change anything about schooling, what would it be and why?
I would say, to be honest with you, like I'm quite a good like independent learner and very organized, so I always did quite well in the terms of like how school is formatted. I did well with exams and things like that because that's sort of the way that I work. Even like obviously my A levels were a little bit different, so a lot of it was studying at home, Zoom calls and things like that. And it's kind of not that dissimilar to what I do now, where I'm on calls with people, I'm talking to clients and things like that. But primarily the work that I do is sort of at home on my own, and I do work well that way. Obviously, not everyone does, and not everyone enjoys school. I never had a problem with it. I really enjoyed like the whole experience. But I would say if I could change anything, it would probably be sort of the career support side of things, like telling students about personal branding and things like that, and just showing that there are other opportunities and there are other routes to get into what you want to do. Because I never really wanted to go to university, and I feel like a lot of the guidance in those last couple of years is really based towards that route. Like they tell you to make a personal statement and everything, just in case you change your mind and you want to go. And I feel like the other avenues that you can go down aren't necessarily so heavily pushed.
Yeah, if so. Did you hear the question or did it go blank?
Sorry, I think it froze a bit there, but I can hear you now.
Are there any career and life goals that you have, and if so, what are they?
So the first thing would be to do more things like this, like podcast events and bits like that. I think it's a little bit scarier than the day-to-day work or like putting a little post up on social media, but I feel like it's one of the good things about the job, just sort of being able to speak to other people and share your experiences as well and sort of give your advice. So I wanted to do more of that this year. And yeah, just sort of onboarding good clients, sort of being happy in the work that I'm doing, and also just helping other people, sort of sharing advice and things like that. This year's been pretty good so far. Obviously, it's flown by. Like, I can't believe that it's June already. But I would say that in terms of like goals and things, pretty on track. Very happy for how the year's been.
Now, moving over to social media branding and content creation. How did you get into social media branding and content creation?
It was kind of a fluke, really. I did a little virtual work experience program as I was coming to the end of my A levels because, obviously, as I spoke about earlier, you couldn't go to workplaces or sort of do anything like that. Our school used to have a thing called Futures Week. So, towards the end of your A levels, you'd sort of get a work experience somewhere and then you would get a week off to sort of either do that or to tour unis and look at the campuses and things like that. So, obviously, just because of how things went, we weren't able to do that, and it was just kind of a normal school week. So I did a couple of little online things just to explore things that potentially I was interested in as a career. And it wasn't until that and sort of like the webinars with the guest experts, and they were saying, if you want to go into marketing or something that's very online based, it's really good to get your name out there and be networking online. So that really is where it came from, just sort of other people's advice, people that were already in the industry saying, like, if I wanted to start out, this is what I would do. So it wasn't something that I came up with myself, really, and it wasn't something that I did intentionally. It was more just a case of everyone was saying to do this. So I was like, I've got some time, I'll give this a go, because if it's going to put me in a better position and it's going to help me to really pinpoint what I want to do, then it's worth giving it a go.
And what skills do you require to work within this sector?
I would say it does kind of depend on specifically what you want to do. So I do social media management and personal brand management. So I'd say the main skills are sort of, if you're offering content creation and that sort of thing, you want to be able to create good graphics and make sure that your clients' brands are reflected in that. Also, with obviously the copywriting, you want to make sure that you can write good posts and that the grammar's good and that they are achieving the goals that you want to achieve. As well as that, obviously, you have got the more analytical side of it where you're tracking metrics, you're looking for patterns in what works. So, being able to sort of look at the data and understand that as well really helps. There are definitely different avenues within digital marketing. Some people go down more of a blog route or an SEO route. So obviously there are going to be different skills that come into that. But for what I would do, I'd say the main skills are just basic design skills, because not every client is going to need graphics and things like that. Sometimes it could be more videography and like photography, but for general social media management, I'd say it's like the design and the copywriting skills that are most important.
Important is it to create a brand for ourselves, project and work, and how can we use social media to do this?
I would say that it's really important, because I think often if you look at these big brands that are doing well at the moment, it's the people that stand out and it's the people that make the brand what it is. So, for example, you've got Odd Muse, like, the founder, not just the brand. Hair Syrup, there's loads of brands at the minute where the founders are so prevalent. And I think there's definitely value in having the brand itself, in having company pages and things like that. But when you've got employees or even just the founder sort of standing up, it does make a big difference. So that is definitely where personal branding comes in, and it's definitely an asset to have. It doesn't have to be really difficult, and I think that's the thing where a lot of people sort of fall into the trap of thinking that they have to be perfect from day one and they have to show up with this perfect online presence and sort of never have made a mistake in their business, and it just isn't the case. With a platform like LinkedIn, it can be a little bit intimidating if you aren't posting on it already, but it really isn't as bad as people tend to think. It can literally just be a case of posting a couple of times a week, learning from what other people are posting and the industry's trends and things like that. It doesn't have to be you committing to posting 5 times a week every week. And I think that with personal branding, it is personal. Like, we're all going to have our own consistencies in terms of how often we post or the things that we post about.
Yeah.
You don't have to be overly specific and be sharing stories or details about your life that you don't feel comfortable sharing. It's just a case of sort of figuring out what you can give value on and figuring out what you're best to speak on, and then putting a strategy in place around that.
How can we develop followership and interest within our projects and walk through our social media?
I would say, honestly, the best thing for building connection with your audience and obviously growing an audience is the engagement side of things and being relatable. Because if you're sharing these really perfect images and posts and you're sort of bragging about buying fancy bags or getting a fancy car, like people are going to see that and they can't relate to it. In some respects, yeah, maybe it can be seen as aspirational, but if your audience is sort of feeling like they're constantly having to look up to you and you're not sort of on their level, it can be quite alienating. I think the best sort of people that do well on social media are the people that are really honest and really transparent, sort of sharing the struggles as well as those high moments. And that is what is going to make you relatable to your audience and sort of make them feel like they're on the same level as you. So at the beginning, your content probably isn't going to be the best it's ever going to be, and you are still getting used to it, and that's okay. But I think by embracing that and sort of embracing the journey and just engaging with people, replying to their comments, sending DMs to new connections or followers, you're going to build a community through that because you're making it a two-way conversation and you're making an effort to show interest in them as well. You can't just post a load of content and expect people to follow you and to constantly engage because you're not really showing that back to them. So I think if you really focus on making it a two-way conversation and getting to know your followers, engaging with other people's content and getting your name out there, then you're going to build a community because you're making the effort to do that. Oh, it froze a bit there.
How important is followership when creating a brand?
I think it is important to obviously get followers, but I think sometimes people put too much emphasis on the quantity instead of the quality. So obviously you can look at brands that have like 10,000 followers and think, wow, they must be sold out and they must be doing so well. But at the end of the day, you don't want to have thousands of followers who aren't relevant to your business. And I think this is where a lot of people go wrong with sort of viral content and sharing controversial opinions because they think it's going to get me followers, it's going to get me views, and that is going to make me money. And that isn't really the case. So I think, yeah, it's important to build followers and get your brand seen, but at the same time, you want to be engaging strategically and you want to be sharing really relevant content to make sure that the right people are following. Because if you have a small following of really relevant accounts who are going to see your offers and then purchase them or become a lead later down the line, that's going to be much more effective than having thousands of followers who actually aren't ever going to buy from you and just followed from one viral post.
Yeah. What is the toughest thing about working in social media and producing content?
I would say the hardest thing is sort of how fast the industry moves because you're sort of at mercy to the platforms. Instagram has so many updates, like all the time. They sort of seem to be bringing out new things or changing things about the algorithm and the way that content is ranked. LinkedIn as well, sometimes the way that your reach can change and they'll add new features and things like that. And it's not always so easy to get behind. Obviously, a few months ago, Instagram changed the size of the grid. So obviously, if you're a marketer, that is quite inconvenient because obviously you've got to resize templates for clients, you've got to resize posts and things like that. So it's kind of hard because you have to constantly be sort of researching and keeping up with things. Even like trends, for example, there's certain events in the year where people are going to be sharing memes from or TikTok trends that then sort of come onto Instagram and things like that. So you have to be keeping track of what's happening, what people are speaking about, and sort of where you can jump on that in a way that's relevant to yourself and your clients.
And what software and platforms do you use to build a website and to generate content for your projects?
I'm not mostly involved in sort of the website sort of things, but I've worked with clients previously who've used things like Squarespace and just the type of websites that are quite easy to sort of go and put content in, add blog posts and things like that, because I think if it's easy to do so, it's easier to sort of keep things updated and keep your website fresh and up to date. I would say in terms of what I do from more of like a social media perspective, some content can be scheduled in app, and I think obviously that is ideal because you don't really want to be using third party platforms where you don't have to, because sometimes the apps don't really like that. Like I know LinkedIn can be a bit strict with that sort of thing. So in-app scheduling is probably one of the best things to have happened because it does make it so much easier. In terms of content from like a graphics perspective, I use Canva. I feel like every social media manager has Canva Pro, and honestly, it's so helpful. In terms of copywriting, I literally just use like the Notes app. Magic Post is a good one for people that sort of need some help with generating drafts, and then you can sort of go in and edit it. They've also got like an inspiration feed, so you can search a keyword and see what the people have been posting about it to give you inspiration. I do use Grammarly just to check over to make sure that the punctuation is good, because I feel like sometimes when you write in something and you're spending so long on it, it just sort of gets to a point where you're not going to notice the mistakes yourself. So Grammarly is really good, and obviously it's free as well, which is helpful. For third-party scheduling, I personally use Metrical. You can also download reports and things like that in it, so it's really helpful from a reports perspective as well. But to be honest, like there is a lot of stuff that you can do with free platforms and sort of just do yourself. So if you are starting out, it is one of the industries where you can get into it without having to make a big investment or pay for like really expensive software.
Yeah. What do businesses ask of you when they approach you to work with them on their branding and content?
Generally, businesses sort of come to a social media manager because they either just don't understand social media and don't really know where to start, or it could be a case that they've sort of tried in the past, they've been on Instagram a little bit or something like that, but they just can't really seem to get any results or sort of see any traction from it. So this could sort of just be because they don't have enough time to commit to posting regularly and they sort of just put posts up sporadically. Or again, it could just be a case of they don't really know how the algorithm works and they don't really know how to sort of take the projects that they're working on and take their experience and format it in a way that is going to work and that is going to get them leads. So generally, it's sort of coming from a place that they've got the ideas and that they know that social media is beneficial for them, but they just don't really know how to go about it themselves.
Ourselves and to build up that followership.
Sorry, what was the question? It froze a little bit.
What are the top tips for using social media to market ourselves and to build up that followership?
I would say if you're sort of starting from zero, the best thing to do is before you start posting content and things like that is to get engaging and just start to build up a little bit of a following. If you're on LinkedIn, obviously it's easy because you can connect with people. So you can sort of take that first move and reach out to people. I would honestly say that at the beginning, it's so normal to sort of feel a bit weird about posting content and sort of think like, who am I to be sharing all this? But so many people have those same doubts. And if you think about the big creators that you're seeing, they've all started from 0 followers too. So I think the biggest thing is to just sort of move past any doubts that you might have or sort of feelings that maybe you shouldn't be posting or that you're not sort of at that point yet where you should have an opinion, because it can be really hard to sort of push yourself to start. But the biggest thing is honestly to just move past that and just remember that everyone else has been in the same position and how you're feeling isn't dissimilar to how other people have been feeling. At the point that you're sort of ready to post, I would say, again, starting with engagement and just building up a little bit of the connections and just sort of getting your name out there a little bit, joining conversations so that you're not then just sort of posting to 0 followers. when you start with content, it can literally be a couple of posts a week. It doesn't have to be every single day, and it's more about finding a frequency that you're going to be able to keep up with, because you don't want to just post every single day for like a month and then leave it for 3 months. You're much better to post a couple of times a week or 3 times a week and then keep that up long term. So it is just a case of finding the right method that works for you, thinking about what you want to share as well, because if you can be quite personal and share your experiences, it's going to resonate with people a lot better than sort of generic facts and information like that. So I think where you can sort of speak about your own experiences and even just sharing your opinions on things, sharing things you've learned, that definitely makes you stand out, and it is going to help you to grow faster because it makes people feel connected with you and your journey.
What are the common myths or mistakes people make or think when they're entering this world of work?
I think in the sort of personal branding side of things, I think people do see the value in it, but sometimes sort of go about it the wrong way because they want to grow really fast. So obviously, if you're looking to get into a job and perhaps you've not really got loads of experience and you just want to look at a way to make yourself stand out, personal branding is obviously a really good strategy. But I think sometimes people focus on sort of having loads of followers and looking really successful as opposed to having a long-term strategy. Some people sort of share controversial opinions and things like that, and yeah, it might get you followers in the short term or make your post go viral, but you just have to think about whether the things you're saying are how you want people to see you, because you don't want to share things that maybe your audience aren't going to take well, and then it sort of down the line it doesn't look good for you. It sort of puts people off. So I think that it's a case of, yeah, it'll set you apart, and having a personal brand is a big asset, but you want to do it in a way that is going to work long term. You don't want to be sort of taking shortcuts and looking for ways to grow quicker and then regretting that later down the line. Same with like buying followers or joining engagement pods. Like there are a lot of sort of quick tips that people can sort of fall into, maybe if they don't know much about what it actually is, and especially if they're new to it. But those are the sort of strategies that might sort of bump your metrics up in the meantime, but long term it's just not going to be effective.
There we go. Are there any other insights into content creation and social media that we haven't hit upon today that you'd be willing to share?
I would honestly say, like, I do get DMs from people sort of saying, you seem so confident, or like, I'm struggling with my confidence and I don't really know how to go about posting content. And I think that is something that so many people face and something that so many people feel, especially at the start. Like, it can be scary to put posts out and sort of just not know how people are going to receive that and whether people are going to engage with it. And it's one of those things that when you're seeing people online, they look really confident, they look really successful. They might say, I'm making 10k months, or I've worked a couple of hours this week and I've made this ridiculous amount of money. And social media is a highlight reel. Like, what you're looking at isn't necessarily the full story, and it's really easy to sort of compare yourself to these posts and these really big wins and feel like you can't really take up space in comparison. So honestly, like, my biggest advice for people is to just focus on yourself, because a lot of what you're seeing is exaggerated, or it's just the really good positives and you're not seeing the negatives of the situation. It's really easy to sort of see other people doing so well and kind of put yourself off and think like, oh, okay, well, I'm not going to start now. I'll just push it back a little bit until I'm more on that level. And I think you just kind of have to remember that it's not reality. When people are saying that they're making 5k sales month and things like that, like, you have to just look into the wording, because quite often you're thinking like, wow, these people are doing all this, and it's just not always like the full situation. You don't want to put yourself off and sort of think that these people aren't facing the same struggles, because a lot of the time behind the scenes they are. They're probably not as confident as they seem to be online, and I think it's really easy to draw that comparison and feel like you shouldn't start. But all of the people that are doing well and getting like thousands of likes and things like that have started from zero, and they probably have the same doubts that anyone else has.
Where do you see social media and content creation in 10 years' time, and how will this change?
I feel like at the moment, a lot of people are speaking about AI and how that's sort of coming up in the industry. And I definitely think that to an extent it can be helpful. Some people can't really afford to invest in social media management or help with their content. So potentially like lower investment tools like ChatGPT or like I spoke about Magic Post again is a good one. And I think it is good in the sense that it helps people that perhaps wouldn't be able to access help otherwise and wouldn't be able to start their personal brand otherwise. But you do have to be careful with it because, for example, like I could put a topic into ChatGPT and say, can you write me a LinkedIn post on this? Can you format it this way? But it's never going to generate exactly what I would say. So I think that if you're using AI and things like that, you have to be a little bit wary of it. Make sure you're fact checking, make sure that you're also changing the post so it still feels like you. Because if everyone's just sort of creating these posts that are a little bit robotic, they're not very personal, you're not going to stand out because it all just feels the same. And I feel like a lot of people will sort of relate to scrolling through their feed and seeing posts that have just been copied and pasted, and like people sharing really similar posts because they've done the same sort of thing. So I do think with AI being so prevalent now and so accessible to so many people, it can be a really good tool for helping you to get started and perhaps like giving you content ideas or drafts that you can then edit. But you've got to be able to stand out and sort of use your own personality as well, because where people are sort of having that help with their post, it does make you stand out when you're being yourself and sharing personal stories, because it's not something that a system can replicate.
Do you fear AI will replace some of the work you do? And how do you compete with companies offering AI for a more personalized touch through what you offer as a professional?
I think again, it's just a case of finding the right balance, because to some extent AI could be helpful and it could be helpful to social media managers because you can sort of use it for perhaps getting drafts or getting talking points. Because, for example, some people, me personally, I do sort of work across quite a range of clients. So, for example, if you're working across maybe 5 different industries, you're not going to know everything that there is to know about those industries, and you're not going to perhaps know all the details that your client would know. So, if you're writing maybe a blog post or you're planning the socials for the month, it could be helpful to generate ideas and things like that. But at the end of the day, like your clients are hiring you for your skills, so you're not just going to hand them over like an AI generated post. And I also think that in the same way, like an AI program can't really place you because it's not getting the skills that you have and sort of the knowledge that you have of the platforms and things like that. So I wouldn't say that I'm personally concerned about it sort of taking over what we do and sort of being a really strong competitor, but I do think that it can be helpful and it can help people that also can't access social media management and sort of don't have the money to pay for it but still want to get their business name out there and sort of make a name for themselves.
And then moving over to running your own business. You started your own business at the age of 21. What year was this and how did you start your own business and why?
Literally last year, but it was more so just a case of I've been freelancing on and off since I was 18, so it was kind of just the natural progression. At that age, it wasn't really something that I saw being long term. I kind of thought I'll just get some experience and then it'll sort of get me in a good position to get a full time job, an agency, or something like that, and sort of just open up the opportunities. I never thought that 4 years on I'd be sort of in the same position, but I'm happy and I enjoy working from home and things like that. Like, I don't feel like things haven't sort of turned out as I intended. It was never really sort of the long term plan, but I'm pleased it did end up this way.
How did you overcome any fear or anxiety at such a young age to take the leap and start your own business?
I think that sort of at any age, you're always gonna have that sort of thing like, oh, what if it doesn't work out? But I think especially when you're young, like you're kind of in the position where you can take risks and it's not necessarily so hard to come back from, because at the end of the day, like you're still so young and you've still got so much time to figure things out or go down a different route if things don't work out. So I do think again it's like the same sort of post on social media. Like if you're starting something, you're always gonna probably have that doubt and kind of think like, is this gonna go the way that I intended? But you just have to give it a chance to, really.
What is the name of your business, and have you developed a growth strategy, and what does this look like?
Imogen Grace Socials. In terms of like a strategy, I would say sort of throughout the whole process, it kind of just has been a case of seeing what happens and going from there. I know that a lot of people really niche down to like a specific sector. For example, there are social media managers that just do property or that just do aesthetics or something like that, whereas I've kind of always kept a broad range, and I think that is quite interesting in the sense that it kind of makes you accessible to a lot of different businesses because you've maybe had experiences with similar sectors and things like that, and I've definitely learned a lot of things about different industries that I wouldn't know otherwise. So that was never really a, a strategic move in terms of sort of being open to so many industries, but I feel like it's something that has sort of benefited me as time's gone on because I've also got quite a lot of knowledge with the more complex brands, and sort of those are the businesses that are maybe quite hesitant to get someone on board and things like that. Quite often they're not really working online, so they don't necessarily understand social media as much as other brands could. That wasn't really an intentional thing, it's just sort of something that I've fallen into, and sort of working with brands in such a wide range of industries and in terms of what they do. But that has been really good for obviously my work and sort of being able to take on different projects because I'm not really closed off to one specific group.
How do you write contracts, and what are the main formalities and requirements that ensure you've got business coming in?
I think this is one of the things that, again, like at the beginning, you might not necessarily think of and you might not necessarily know how to do it, but there are so many templates online, and even like other social media managers, perhaps if they're coaches and things like that, sometimes will have sort of free templates or guides. I would say the main things are sort of the deliverables, the time frame, the payment terms, having something in there as well that says that if they want extra work or something like that, that's going to be charged separately and a separate invoice will be given, because you don't want to just sort of keep on saying like, yeah, I'll do that, yeah, I'll do this, and the scope of work be creeping up, but you're being paid the same. So I think having a contract in place is really important for both yourself and the client, because should anyone want to terminate the agreement, then it's really easy. You've both got notice, and I feel like that is helpful. And yeah, I would say the main things to have is how much you're getting paid or what the scope of work is, all the key details like that, as well as sort of who owns the content. Again, like I would say, it's important to get advice on that, especially if you're new to being a social media manager, because you want to make sure that you are protected and that you are going to be respected, because at the end of the day, like that is your income, and having those contracts in place does protect you.
Are there times that you've turned down work because the company you're potentially working with doesn't fit with your values or align with what you're doing at Imogen Grace Socials?
Yeah, so I think this is one of those things where not every business is going to be right for you, and also you're not going to be right for every business. So generally, if you get an inquiry, you'll jump onto a discovery call. So this is just a case of understanding what they do, what they're expecting, things like that. And to an extent, like, yeah, it is a case of they're seeing if you're the right fit for them and they're seeing if they would want to proceed with it. But I think what's maybe not spoken about enough is that this is also the same for you as a social media manager, and it's also a case of you're seeing if they're the right fit for you, because you don't want to take on a client that you know you aren't going to get results for, or perhaps that you feel isn't ready for this yet. For example, if a client came to me with literally no branding, no idea of who their target market is, maybe not even fully developed their product or service, I can't really get the word out about something that they aren't sure on yet. So I think it is a case of you're sort of seeing where they're at and making sure that you can work with that, because it's much better to turn down a project or say, I don't really feel like you're ready for this investment yet. How about we talk about this in a couple of months? Then take on a project before you're ready to, or take on a project that you're not confident with and sort of then struggling with it and not seeing results, because you don't want to deliver a poor service or not get the results that you know you can get just because you're sort of taking on clients for the sake of it. So yeah, I would say that it's just a case of sort of seeing what they want as well as their expectations, because sometimes people can sort of think that you can work miracles and you can get them like 10,000 followers in a really short space of time, and that again doesn't work. So I think you have to also be wary of their expectations, because you don't want to commit to something that you know you can't deliver just to sort of keep them happy.
Where do you want to see the business in 5 years' time?
I would say, like, honestly, much the same as now, like, fully booked, happy clients, doing things like this as well, and sort of sharing the journey and sharing the experience that I've had. I think a lot of people, especially with this whole like digital marketing trend of where people are saying, like, I'm working 2 hours a day and I'm making £10,000, and it just kind of gives people the wrong idea about marketing and sort of what it is. I honestly, like, I'm not selling courses and trying to like get people to commit to things that I don't really think work. And I think there maybe aren't enough people sort of speaking about the better side of things and sort of growing an agency, having happy clients, and just making a reasonable amount of money, not like crazy amounts every month. So honestly, I'd just be happy with things sort of as they are now.
If you were running your business in 5 years, it was healthy, you had offices, staff, several contracts, good income, a strong reputation, but you were offered a dream job at a very large company with exclusive benefits, what would you do?
I honestly feel like I would stay, and I feel like a lot of people would say that. Obviously, if you want to work for someone else, like, go work for someone else. Like, I think everyone else has whatever's right for them. Like, you have just got to do what's right for you. But I think personally, I would just sort of stay how things are, because I do think it is a privilege at my age to be working with really cool businesses and doing things that I enjoy doing, as opposed to just sort of being in a job for the sake of it. And I do see that being a long term thing.
And the last question we have for today, what things should people consider before starting up their own business?
I think sometimes, especially now with social media, people kind of make it seem really easy to just start a business. And to some extent, it is. Like with marketing, for example, you don't have to have loads of money, you don't have to invest a lot of money into starting. You can literally start with very minimal money. And I feel like that is sort of why people can think it's really easy to do, but you can't just sort of put half your effort in and hope that things take off. Like, you have to know that you want this to be something long term, that you're really going to put the effort in, and that you're going to look into strategies and ways that you can obviously grow. So I do think it's a case of sort of just making sure that you are willing to do it, and that you're not just sort of looking at the highlight reels of others and wanting that for yourself, because that's a lot further down the line. Like the first few months especially, you're going to have to sort of put a lot of work in, maybe not get a lot back, and you're going to have to sort of believe that you can build up from that and that you can get to where other people are. Like, you can't just sort of see other people saying, like, oh, I've done this and I've made £1,000 my first month, and think that it's going to just automatically happen for you, because we're all sort of on our own paths. You might be starting a different point as well, so you can't necessarily rely on the results of others as an indicator of how things are going to go for you. So I think before you start, like, you just have to make sure that you've got all of the facts and that you're actually in a position where you can give it the effort and the time that it needs, rather than just sort of seeing other people being successful and thinking that you can do the same, because it's going to take time. You have to have that.
Yeah. And that's all the questions we have for today, Imogen. So we'll just wrap it up with thank you, Imogen, and thank you for agreeing to come on the podcast. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you. Thank you.